It is now my great pleasure to invite Dr Terri Simpkin to present the occasional address. Dr Simpkin is an Associate Professor in Management and MBA Director at the University of Tasmania. Prior to this, she was the Director, MBA Program International at the University of Nottingham, Higher Education Principal at CNET Training in the United Kingdom, and Head of Department Leadership and Management at Anglia Ruskin University, also in the United Kingdom. She has enjoyed a broad international career in the education sector as an academic and manager, as well as private sector leadership in human resources, strategy and business management. Having worked internationally with governments, industry associations, large organisations and SMEs for 2 decades, she is a current consultant to industry and has become known as a research-informed, practice-led academic, particularly regarding complex challenges facing contemporary workforces now and into the future. As a Churchill Fellow, she researched strategic human resources practices across Britain and Ireland and undertook professional development at Disney in Florida. Terri holds a Bachelor of Business Administration, Human Resource Management, Bachelor of Commerce with honours and a PhD from the University of Tasmania. She was named as one of the 50 most influential women in the data economy for her work on digital infrastructure sector workforce challenges and was awarded the Bryn Fowler Agent of Change Award by Global Women in Telco and Tech for her work advancing inclusion and diversity both in and outside of the workplace. She is known as an authority on the Impostor Phenomenon, reflecting her professional interest in contemporary exclusion practices and global workforce challenges. Her website forfakesake.org, aims to diminish the myths and fallacies associated with the experience of IP. Her lectures on topics such as leadership, diversity and inclusion, and management in the Discworld novels have been sellout successes at the Cambridge Festival of Ideas, among other fora. I now invite Dr Simpkin to present the occasional address.
Thank you. Deputy Chancellor, distinguished guests, members of the University, graduands, friends and family. Picture this. A bright blue sky capping a late summer afternoon. I'm sitting in my car overlooking the rugby field at the river end of the UTAS Sandy Bay campus. I've driven here today because it is a special day. It is a day I know I will remember for all my days yet to come. It is the day I submit my PhD thesis. Now, you would expect that it would be a day of jubilation, of relief, of anticipation, perhaps of closure. Instead, I sit in my car wondering how I can avoid the crushing embarrassment that is likely to befall me once this thing was out in the world and judged to be a bit rubbish. How, I thought, can I conspire to avoid the shame and indignity of having the external examiners question why I was let into the doctoral program in the first place? How was I going to repay the Australian government for the scholarship they'd awarded me, obviously in error? How would I face my family, who keenly anticipated the vicarious pride that comes with having a doctor in the family? Once this thing was released into the world, everyone would know that I was a fake and a failure. While I'd always known that coming from a dirt-poor working-class background in the East End of London to low socioeconomic circumstances in Tasmania, I knew that people like me didn't go to university, let alone get into a doctoral program. Ironically, my area of academic inquiry, antecedents to occupational decision-making, had me trawling through reams of data, journals and monographs and textbooks that illustrated the grim fact in stark black and white. Data doesn't lie, and it was screaming at me, "You shouldn't be here." And so I sat in my car contemplating the lies and fabricated circumstances I could invoke to get me out of handing the thing in. And I sat there, physically unable to move through the terror of it. And I sat there, For the longest time, absolutely petrified. Now, clearly I did manage to get out of the car, and given I'm standing here wearing the glorious headwear they give to people who have PhDs, the examiners called for no material corrections. It was about as good as a result as you can get. But I was left wondering what that hellish long-standing fear of failure was all about. Well, it has a name. The impostor phenomenon. It is not a syndrome, no matter what social media tries to tell you. It is an irrational but very real fear of intellectual fraudulence despite high achievement and success. While I don't know you, I do know that a proportion of you in this room will know that feeling. The toe-curling discomfort, the flight or fight anxiety, or even the abject terror that the experience brings. And I'll come back to this in a minute. So, shortly after my implausible graduation, I was on a plane back to England and to a host of work and personal experiences afforded by my professional and academic background. I had a global management role in a university that saw me working variously in sensational places like Vietnam, China, Trinidad, Botswana, and Sri Lanka. I worked as an advisor to industry and spoke at events in New York, Frankfurt, New Orleans, Paris, and Monaco. It was a tough job, but someone had to do it. And I was speaking alongside leaders in the big end of town, such as Google and Amazon and even the British Secret Service, all the while thinking, someone's going to find me out for a fraud any minute now. I remember distinctly sitting like a bunny in the headlights as a newly appointed board member to the Baker Deering Educational Trust in the UK. I was sat between a knight, someone who had an OBE, and across the table, three members of the House of Lords. But the real kicker came when I was invited to dinner at an event with the member of the royal family at Buckingham Palace. And I thought to myself as I wandered into the Queen's house, I'm an ex-waiter from Hobart. Toto, we're not in Kansas anymore. So why am I telling you this? People tell you to dream big, aim for the impossible, you can do anything, and so you might. It's easier to aim for the impossible because by its very nature, the impossible has no boundaries. The implausible, well, that's a different matter. Aiming for the implausible or the improbable, such as going to university when the statistics tell you a contrary story, working with lords and knights as a person brought up in working-class social housing experiment that went so spectacularly wrong that the government had it demolished, or working in some of the most exotic places in the world when your family thought that going to Lakes Entrance in a camper van was the height of travelling sophistication, it's much more challenging because it is the stuff of social narrative, that story that the world tells you about yourself. And it is this that the imposter phenomenon feeds on. What we think is plausible or not is the stuff of overt and implicit bias, stereotyping and discrimination. It is a story perpetuated by master narratives that invoke invisible but often powerful boundaries on individuals, but they are, in the most part, utterly false. It was the late, great Sir Terry Pratchett who put this beautifully when he said, "Stories are a parasitical life form, warping lives only in the service of the story itself. It takes a special kind of person to fight back." The discomfort, anxiety, imposter experiences I endured became to me because my life was so implausible, so contrary to what the world was telling me that I should be doing, that I thought it a mistake and it couldn't possibly be a consequence of my own doing. Hannah Gadsby, in her graduation address last year, put to her audience a question: who do you want to be? It is a beautifully elegant and wise question, and I follow that up with a question of my own. What is your story? Not the story of your family circumstances, not the story of your work or your social background or your income or your skin colour or your gender or your sexual orientation, your story. The ritual of graduation has it that here you will be a graduand, but by the time you get to there, you will be a graduate, legitimising the power and the tools and insights to examine your stories and to critique those narratives around you. Do they serve you or not? You will be changed, and in being changed, you can create your own story, leveraging the community of alumni around you. There is power in our community. So I leave you with an ironic twist to my story. We observe your graduation in a hotel where I used to work unsociable hours for minimum wage in precarious jobs. Out there, I used to serve cocktails and dinner as a waiter. Up there, I used to clean toilets. And now I get to wear this glorious hat and have the privilege of sharing in the celebration of your achievement. So, what's your story? Congratulations, may you dream impossible things, but achieve the implausible. Thank you.